Welcome to the Where Were You podcast inside WHIP's podcast studios. Dan Wilson sitting alongside Graham Foley and Addison Hunsicker, episode 2 of the Where Were You podcast. And today we are discussing, it is Friday, February 23rd. It is even another week has gone by, and I still can't believe that the Eagles are still Super Bowl champions. And our first episode was about our experiences watching this year's Super Bowl. Today's story is going to be another Eagles story, but we're gonna kick it back a little bit to when we were all in 5th grade, 2009, and the Phillies just won the World Series, and the Eagles are trying to follow it up with a championship run of their own, and they're making it all the way to the NFC Championship Game in Arizona. Now, Addison and I both were watching at our respective houses. I'm not even sure, you might have been watching somewhere else, but on a TV.
I was not watching it at my house.
Where were you? So now you're where were you?
Oh, where was I? I was at my neighbor's house. How about that?
That's exciting.
Okay, big neighborhood party.
Okay, so Addison was at a neighborhood party. I was at my own house, but Graham was actually in Arizona, and well, I'll let him tell the rest of the story.
Yeah, so it's a fun story. Not a fun story at all, actually. But I feel like now that the Eagles have won the Super Bowl, I can kind of get rid of my demons and talk about this a little bit more openly and be okay with it. So first of all, I want to preface this with the Thursday or Wednesday, I forget, before the Eagles NFC Championship game. Solely the whole thing with the plane in the Hudson River. That happened. And so I came home and I was watching on TV like, wow, I can't believe all these people survived. I know it seems off topic, but it connects. And my mom comes home and starts freaking out that I'm watching that. She's like, you're going to have nightmares, turn it off. And I thought she really overreacted. I didn't know that the very next day I came home from school and my parents surprised me with tickets to the NFC Championship game. And so, of course, my mom was trying to protect me from, fear of flying and everything like that. And I was still terrified when I got on the plane. So smart on her. But they surprised me with tickets. My dad and I were going to go down. And we were going to go to Arizona with my cousin Connor, who lives in Philadelphia, and we're going to meet my uncle, who lives in Arizona full time. So we got down to Arizona, and it was me and my dad, my cousin, my uncle, and my uncle's 4 friends. And just, it was a fun, we got down the Saturday, we spent the night, it was great. Went to the stadium early and tailgated, and, all day, everyone's, trying to eat food and have fun. Me and my dad were just, like, sitting in the air-conditioned car. First of all, it's 70 degrees, it was awesome. And we're sitting in the car just like, oh my gosh, I want to go in the game so badly. That's all we could think about. So my uncle, in Arizona, who is a postal inspector, so he can sniff out some crimes usually, foreshadowing here. He got 4 tickets for him and his 3 friends. And then when my dad told him that he was going to come down, he got 4 more tickets for, us 3 and another one of his friends. And he got them off Craigslist. And when you hear that sentence now, it's kind of, what?
It's a little sus.
It's a little sus. But back then, he always says Craigslist was a new thing, and so it wasn't as sus back then. And also, he solves crime, so he knew what he was doing. So he thought. So he has a friend who works for the Arizona Cardinals in the ticketing department who gave him a scanner. So when he met the guy in some parking lot to buy the tickets, very shady, he used a scanner on the tickets, and it popped up and said, ticket approved, whatever. So he bought the tickets, and it was like $250 each, something like crazy, what you expect for the NFC Championship game. And we had our tickets. So after a long tailgate, we go into the game, and so we split up. My uncle and his 3 friends, that group of 4, go behind the end zone, but behind where Deshaun Jackson caught the bobbled go-ahead touchdown. They were there. And me and my dad, my cousin, and one of my uncle's friends go up to the upper deck. We're right at the 50-yard line, and it's amazing. So we walk in, and I remember for some reason when they were scanning our tickets, it took a little bit longer than I think normal. And I had this little thought, like, what if they didn't scan? But, I feel like I just felt that every time I go into the stadium, they scan, and we went in. I grabbed a rally towel that they didn't want me to have as an Eagles fan. They're giving it to Cardinals fans, but I was 11 years old, and I ripped it out of someone's hand, and I got it. And then we went up.
You delinquent.
We went up to our seats, and this was, looking back, this should have been a warning sign right away that we should have, done something differently than we ended up doing. But we got up to our seats, and our seats were like 10, 11, 12, 13. And the ones that were open were like 9, 10, 11, 12, something like that. So there were 4 seats open, and we had 4 people. So, me as a kid not really realizing what was happening was like, it's fine, let's just sit down. But my dad was a little bit worried. And so we talked to the people around the seats. They all had season tickets. They had a big, Cardinals logo on it. It was definitely real. But so we were a bit confused, but, all we were thinking was, we're here, there's 4 seats, let's sit down. And so we sat through the first 5 minutes of the game. We saw Jordan Sparks from American Idol sing the national anthem. It was amazing. And we saw
She's from Arizona, right?
She's from Arizona.
Okay,
Her dad played in the NFL too. And so we watched the first 5 minutes of the game. We saw David Akers miss what would become a pretty important field goal. And then we saw 4 people come up the stairs, and they said, "Hey, you're in our seats." And first of all, I'd like to say that one of these people was wearing the Steelers jersey at the Eagles and Cardinals NFC
Who
Championship
were also
game.
playing that day.
We're also playing that day, and
the
it was
AFC.
and the and so and it was a girlfriend and boyfriend or some kind of couple that was Arizona and Pittsburgh, and I just moved from Baltimore. The Ravens are playing the Steelers in the AFC Championship game, so my thought was it's going to be Eagles Ravens in the Super Bowl, and I'm going to call my friends who I just left, and it's going to be awesome. And these people, as we were as they were there, were like thinking it'd be their Super Bowl and end up being theirs anyway. But I was very upset. But they came up and said you're in our seats, and so we kind of had like a back and forth, like these are our tickets, but we kind of knew in the back of our minds that something was up with ours. But without really thinking, they pointed down to the usher, and so the usher brought us all down and started looking at the tickets. And I also would like to say that on the plane ride to Arizona, they handed out Chickies and Pete's Go Eagles signs. And as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old kid, I was so excited about it. I had the sign. I left it in my seat. And as we were walking down, I looked back and I saw it up there, but I didn't go back to get it, and that broke my heart because it probably sat there. But whatever. Who cares? So
Where do you see the game?
Yeah. So we walk down, and the usher starts talking to us about the tickets, and it's a very, very long conversation. So my dad buys me a Coke and says, "Go stand in the tunnel and watch the game." So I probably watched until there's maybe 5 minutes left in the first quarter, something like that. Like, we watched a lot of the game. These people came late wearing a Steelers jersey, and it took a long time to talk about it. And then my dad called me over, and we all walked downstairs with 2 other security guards that were called by the usher. And they brought us to this door, and they opened it up, and we went outside. And you looked outside, and instantly you knew, we were probably going to get screwed because there were 250 at least other fans, mostly Eagles fans too, all waiting outside. And they just said, "Go join the group." And that's when we started looking around and realizing we could be in trouble.
Okay, so this room, what was the purpose of this room? Like, what was it supposed to be for?
And it was
Scandals like this?
outside the stadium?
It was outside the stadium, so it wasn't
Okay.
a holding room. And I feel like this probably wasn't like a normal setup. It was just like there was like an area that they just put us. There wasn't even like a fence or anything. We were just standing in this group. But the thing
Gotcha,
we
okay.
knew was that we can't get away if these tickets do have problems with it. We can't do anything about it now that we're outside. We can't get back in, and that was their exact purpose. So we were waiting outside with like 250 other fans, and meanwhile, the Cardinals went up by a lot. I believe it was like 21-0 or something like that early in the game. And this is before smartphones, so we had no idea what was going on. All we could hear was like the general roar of the crowd outside. I just remember looking at the big metallic outer side of the Cardinals stadium, and you could just hear the crowd. And we're sitting here miserable. We have no idea what's going on, and we can tell that our Eagles are losing by a lot, but we don't know exactly what's happening. And so we're waiting there, and then we look over and we see the 4 people that came with us talking to an usher, and then they go back inside. And that's when it really hit us that there could be a problem. And not even 2 minutes later, a guy comes out, and I guess they sorted out everything with everyone out there and closed the door and said, "Excuse me, you guys all have fake tickets. You are not allowed to come back into this game. There's nothing that we can do. There's nothing that we owe you either. And so you all must go home." And, the least amount of sympathy as you could have. And they said, "You all have to go home." And so we had fake tickets that were so good. They scanned the scanner my uncle used. They scanned to get into the stadium, but they weren't correct. And it just so happened that 4 seats were open, that we couldn't even have time to question it and then walk around or anything like that. And, we were taken out, and that was the end of it. So instantly, I'm 10 years old at the time, about to turn 11. I was a young kid. I started crying. I was very upset. And as I'm doing that, my dad was furious and went over to a security guard and started, yelling at him and all this stuff like that. And they were like, "Sir, you have to calm down." We were with a friend who was an FBI agent who pulled out his badge to try to get us in the stadium, which is something you really shouldn't do as an FBI agent. And that didn't work. They were very upset about that. And we started to realize there was really nothing we could do. So we called our uncle. He offered to leave the game, but we're like, no. Like, you have real tickets. Like, stay in there. And so we just kind of had to look around and realize, we messed up and couldn't do anything about it. So we ended up walking probably a good half mile to a Marriott hotel by the Cardinal Stadium. And we went to the courtyard of this hotel, and they had a big screen, and they put the game up. And that is in Arizona, where I watched the NFC Championship game. And every time the Super Bowl's there, any event, like college championship, and they show like a big blimp view of the stadium, I point out, there's the hotel where I watched the NFC Championship game in '09. But yeah, so we were heartbroken, came all the way to Arizona for this game, and could not watch it in the stadium.
That obviously stinks. Now, do you remember much of the game after that, watching it?
Yeah, so I think
Okay.
by the time we got to the Marriott, we were it was like at halftime. I think it was 24-6 at halftime. It was something.
The Eagles were losing by a lot.
They were losing by a lot. They make a huge comeback.
And so they started the comeback. And to me, we're during the second half, we're watching, and I'm also making phone calls. Like my mom's freaking out. She's like, "Why did this happen?" And we're explaining it, and we're talking to the people around us. A lot of Eagles fans with us who got kicked out also went to this Marriott, and we're all kind of collectively grieving not just about our tickets, but now about our team. That made it to the playoffs too, on like a miracle, beating the Cowboys in the last day of the season. And I remember us starting to slowly come back, and I remember Deshaun Jackson catching a touchdown that put the Eagles up very late in the game. And it was, a deep pass from McNabb, and he bobbled it and made the catch and found his way in the end zone. And suddenly, we were winning in a game we shouldn't have been winning at all. And I remember my dad wasn't there. He was talking to someone from the hotel, like by the bar. I also remember right when we walked in, we went to a bar, and they were reviewing the Anquan Bolden catch. It was when he was like really young and with the Cardinals and everything like that. And that was right before halftime. And it could have gotten a lot worse if they ruled it a catch, if they ruled it incomplete. But I remember, and I remember I jumped on my dad's back and said, "We're winning," and he wasn't even singing. We all went crazy, but then slowly it got worse, and it was miserable.
Yeah, that is so. You just all right. So you flew there Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
You flew back Monday.
Flew back Tuesday actually. So
okay.
We stayed there Sunday. Monday was Martin Luther King Day, so we had a day off from school. So we spent the day there, and that was fun. Like we made the most of the trip at least, and hung out with my uncle and everything like that, and then flew back Tuesday and missed a day of school. That was actually President Obama's first inauguration day, and so we had a stop in Chicago, which where he's from, and that's where we watched his inauguration in the airport in Chicago. But yeah, just fun.
That's the most unique story in and of itself. Not sports related, but it is very unique and
historical events.
Yeah, right.
So, okay, so what is the number one? Okay, so you're at the game, you're inside the game.
Mm-hmm.
This guy you said has never been caught, as far as you know.
As far as I know, this guy's never been caught.
Someone who created 200, or probably more than one.
It was all from the same person.
So we don't know that for sure. We know that the next day there was a news segment on like a local Phoenix channel, and this woman who was crying and was interviewed was an Eagles fan sitting 2 rows behind us. She got kicked out before we did, and looking back, my dad and my uncle's friends regret all the time. Why didn't we just recognize it? Why didn't we just walk around the stadium and never sit in our seats?
So just do like a standing room thing.
Yeah, get a standing room thing, because there were signs definitely there. We just didn't want to believe it, and we weren't. It's just not something you really want to think about. But yeah, so what was your question again?
Oh, so my question was, you get inside the game with these 250 other people.
Oh yeah,
who were all fake and supposedly created by either one guy or one group
or just
people
part of a group
who has, as far as never been caught.
Yeah, so this guy, my uncle met him in person, and he gave him his original cell phone number, or his actual cell phone number. Like he called him and it worked, and I don't think it worked afterwards. And I think my uncle tried. He's a postal inspector. Tried to track him down, but as far as we know, the guy who sold us our particular ticket, we don't know if he was part of a large group or not, but he was definitely not caught.
Now, he met this guy in a parking lot?
I'm not sure if it was a parking lot, but he met this guy in person to get these tickets.
And where did he meet him in person?
I'm actually sure. I have to find out about that.
But he's from Philly.
Somewhere in Arizona.
Oh, so he flew to Arizona.
My uncle lives in Arizona.
Gotcha, so you did say that. Okay, so he lives in Arizona, bought the tickets from some guy
in Arizona.
Mm-hmm. We don't know how linked that guy was. I mean, these tickets sometimes get passed around 4, 5, 20 billion times. And the guy who sold to you, for all he knew, very well may have thought it was real himself.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess
I doubt it though. But maybe
you would doubt it, but who knows? You don't know. And some people buy tickets just to resell them.
I thought it was curious too that there were so many Eagles fans involved in this too, because it wasn't like Craigslist Philadelphia. My uncle got this in Arizona, but I mean, some of the Eagles fans wanted to go to that game, and there were a ton of Eagles fans there too, especially in our tailgate. Ton of Eagles fans, and especially when Deshaun Jackson caught the touchdown, you could hear them. But I thought it was curious how they almost only got Eagles fans in that ring.
Have you ever had any situations of fake tickets or having trouble getting into a game either before or since then?
I personally have not. I've heard stories of people doing that, and it's made me cautious about ever buying tickets from some guy outside of a stadium, because I hear horror stories, especially with the Eagles games, because that's when you're gonna have the most fake tickets. That
Yeah, it's a little bit different for a Phillies game in June. Yeah,
right, exactly. But my one friend went to the Winter Classic in 2012 and bought tickets with a random guy outside. It was him and his friends and some guy also on the street that bought it from another guy in the street. And they got to the gates. The first guy they didn't know tried to scan his ticket, and they had a problem. So the guy scanning the ticket was like, "Oh, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go get a manager." And while he was gone, they kind of put together his fake. The guy jumped the turnstile and ran to the Winter Classic, and his friends were kind of frozen. Like, "Do we jump? What do we do?" They didn't. They were honest people, and they ended up paying like $200 for nothing.
Yeah, I have a friend from high school whose dad used to be a big time like ticket seller. I don't know where he was in the ranks, but when he goes to a Philadelphia sporting event, he can immediately identify which guys are real and which guys are fake.
Really?
And he knows most of their names. Well, this guy was just like involved with it for so long. He used to do it himself.
Mm-hmm.
He used to do it himself.
Gus Johnson over
here. This is March. But so I've had two almost experiences, not on that kind of level.
Oh.
It was 2 years ago, week 4. The Eagles were playing at the Redskins.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought the tickets. This was on StubHub. Or no, I'm sorry, Vivid Seats.
Mm-hmm.
And these are two problems with Vivid Seats. So generally, I've gotten in on both of them, but had trouble both times. So I bought tickets with Vivid Seats. And it was my friend and I, we would go down to the Eagles-Redskins game at FedEx Field. I'd never been to an Eagles game on the road before. The tickets were like $40, 10 rows, like behind the end zone or something like that, which is why I realized it's actually cheaper to drive there and go to the game than to even go to a game here. So I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. And so we buy them. And fortunately, we got there actually super early to tailgate there. We did the whole experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all right, let's just get in the game early, whatever. So we go to the gate at around noon, 1 o'clock kickoff. And tickets not working. And they're like, yeah. And the tickets were printed out, like, look real, whatever. I'm like, I printed these out myself. I didn't buy them from some scalper. I bought them on Vivid Seats.
Mm-hmm.
The guy's like, that is weird. Yeah, I'm not really sure. It very possibly could just be my scanner. So then we go around to another entrance.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, can you try these? Same thing happens. Like some sort of error message. So then we have to go to the Redskins box office.
Mm.
We had been sold the tickets apparently from some Redskins season ticket holder. And fortunately, they were able to print out like their own tickets, the season tickets that has the Redskins logo on it, whatever. It says game, whatever number it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so we ended up getting in fine. We didn't end up missing any of the game, as it turned out. That's maybe why you should always try and enter early for that reason. But
yeah,
it kind of, fortunately, not even planning for that, it ended up working out.
Yeah.
More recently, this year at the Sixers-Suns game, hot ticket, right? Yeah. So the tickets were bought on Vivid Seats, and we couldn't get in. And again, we had to go to the box office. They print us out new ones. So I don't know whether I know StubHub has become kind of like the official marketplace, at least I know of the Sixers, and more so with the NFL. And they probably are the biggest name in like the ticket resale business. But Vivid Seats, I don't know. I feel like I've definitely had times where I've been fine with them because sometimes they're cheaper, sometimes they're not, and those are just two stories that I think just happen to both be them.
StubHub is definitely the best route to go. If you're, I know for like Sixers, since we're all part of a group that splits Sixers tickets. I'm able to like go on like our account and like sell them through our account site.
Right,
like I don't have to go into StubHub to do it.
Okay,
that's how like linked it is. Yeah,
so and yeah, they have a partnership, I'm sure too.
Real quick story: the first time I ever used StubHub or my dad ever used StubHub, was Game 1 of the 2007 National League Division Series against the Colorado Rockies. Phillies got swept in the series, running out the point.
Bad.
Yeah, that was bad.
Terribly.
So, but I was so excited. He pulls me out of 4th grade that day, and he's like, "We're going to the Phillies game." It was 3 o'clock start, something like that, and he bought the tickets on StubHub. I've never used it before, and this was before you could even print them out, or I guess these specific tickets you couldn't print out. So the StubHub office in Philadelphia, I'm not even sure if it's still there, but at the time, was at the Holiday Inn.
Oh yeah.
So we had to get off, and we took the subway there that day.
Oh wow.
Had to walk all the way to the Holiday Inn. This is my dad, who is in his 40s at this point. I'm like 10.
Oh.
So we like literally like book it all the way over there, book it all the way back to the stadium, and somehow, some way, I don't know what time we got off at the subway, but made incredible time and walked in.
Wow.
And got to the seats like within 15 seconds of first pitch.
Man, that's what we had to do in Dallas, too. That's a whole other story, going to
Yeah.
Dallas this year. And I will say, too, you said something about the Redskins. My first 2 games were at the Redskins. I lived in Baltimore at the time. I also went to Dallas, and I went to Arizona. The meanest fans I've ever encountered were in Arizona. The walk back from the Marriott across the stadium parking lot to our car after the game was the worst experience I ever had at that point in my life.
And there's nothing you can say.
There's nothing you can say. We lost, and it was just the most, punch in the gut day. My uncle still doesn't forgive himself. And we only buy from StubHub now. only accredited. But at least, the Eagles Super Bowl has kind of alleviated some of that pain as we can enjoy some of it. But, yeah.
Well, we're out of time. We've actually gone a little bit over time. This was episode 2 of the Where Were You podcast for Graham Foley, Addison Hunsicker. I'm Dan Wilson. Thank you for listening. We will be back next week. Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.